Be honest. How many nights have you laid in bed asking God, why does my marriage feel so cold? Why does the person who once held you close now lie next to you like a stranger? Why does the home you built together feel like a place where intimacy died quietly, without a funeral, without a warning, without an explanation? The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Psalm 34:18. If you feel crushed, unseen, untouched, God is not far. He is nearer now than in the seasons you felt strong. Scripture does not ignore the pain of a marriage stripped of affection. The husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. Do not deprive one another except by mutual consent. 1 Corinthians 7:3-5. God created marriage to be a union of bodies, hearts, and souls. When intimacy disappears, something sacred is being neglected. Something holy is being starved. But here is the part men rarely confess. When your wife stops reaching for you, you begin to question your worth. You question your masculinity. You question whether God still sees your pain or whether you are being punished for something you don't understand. And yet, fear not, for I am with you. I will strengthen you. I will help you. Isaiah 41:10. You are not unseen. You are not forgotten. You are not fighting this heartbreak alone. The enemy loves cold marriages. He loves silence. He loves emotional distance. A frozen marriage is easier to break than a burning one. And many men silently carry this burden because they think talking about loneliness makes them weak. But God says the opposite. Your honesty opens the door for healing. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Proverbs 4:23. You cannot guard a heart that you deny is hurting. Some of you sleep inches from a woman who hasn't touched you in months, maybe years. Some of you walk through your own home like a ghost. You pay the bills, you show up, you provide, you stay loyal. But emotionally, you exist in a famine. Tell me, when did love turn into obligation? When did marriage turn into survival mode? When did affection become a memory instead of a rhythm? God does not call a man to pretend everything is fine. God calls a man to truth, to courage, to fighting for what is holy, even if you feel like you're fighting alone. Hebrews 13:4 says, marriage should be honored by all. But how do you honor a marriage that feels dead? You start with honesty. You start with prayer that is raw, not polished. You start by admitting to God and yourself that the distance is real, the pain is real, and the silence is breaking something inside you. And then you bring it into the light. Because darkness is where marriages die. Light is where they heal. I want to hear your story. I want you to help other people who are living this same heartbreak. Don't hide it. Don't carry it alone. Comment what you've been going through so others can speak life into you. Let's make this conversation a place where healing begins, where truth is finally spoken out loud, where men and women stop suffering in silence. If this touched you, if it felt like God was speaking directly into your situation, comment, "This is my story," and then share whatever you feel led to share. Your honesty might be the turning point for someone else's marriage or your own. When you give everything yet feel unseen, it does something to a man's soul. You start waking up every day wondering how the person you vowed your life to can look directly at you and still not see you. You pour out love, patience, stability, loyalty, and in return you receive distance, coldness, and silence. And the most painful part, you remember who they used to be. You remember the warmth they once carried. You remember the softness in their voice, the spark in their eyes. Now it feels like you're living with a version of them that's shut down emotionally, and you're left trying to love someone who has built a wall you cannot climb. Malachi 2:14-16 says, "The Lord is witness between you and the wife of your youth, though she is your partner, the wife of your covenant." God sees everything happening inside your home, not just the arguments, not just the distance, but the silent hurt you never speak out loud. The covenant still matters to him, even when it feels ignored by your spouse. You've probably asked yourself 1,000 times, why does she pull away? Why does she shut down? What changed? Is it me? Is it her? Is it something we never healed from? Sometimes emotional withdrawal is rooted in deep wounds. Your spouse hasn't acknowledged fear, shame, insecurity, resentment, unspoken disappointment, or even spiritual heaviness. Psalm 147:3 tells us, "He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds." But wounds that remain hidden grow into walls that suffocate intimacy. Maybe she's hurting in ways she never said. Maybe she hardened herself to survive something she never processed. Maybe she doesn't even understand her own distance. But here's the truth, your pain is real, even if her reasons are complicated. Ephesians 5:25-28 calls a man to love sacrificially, but it never calls him to live invisible. God never intended for a husband to fade into the background of his own marriage, begging for affection like a starving man hoping for crumbs. Love is supposed to be mutual. Affection is supposed to be shared. Emotional connection is supposed to flow both ways. Romans 12:10 says, "Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves." Mutual devotion, mutual honor, mutual care. If you are giving but not receiving, pouring out but never being poured into, carrying the relationship on your back while your spouse retreats, that imbalance becomes a wound of its own. And wounds unhealed eventually become resentment. You try to bury it. You swallow it. You pray over it. But living unseen eats away at the soul of a man. Proverbs 17:22 says, "A cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones." And some of you are spiritually and emotionally dried up because you keep pretending that everything is okay. Let me ask you something, and answer it honestly inside your heart. How long have you been giving love with no return? How long have you been trying to warm a marriage that gives you nothing back? How long have you been carrying both sides of the relationship, waiting for her to open her eyes and see the man who still fights for her? Here's the part where I want you to breathe. God does not overlook your effort. God does not ignore your tears. God does not dismiss the work you put into a covenant that feels one-sided. He sees every moment you chose love when you could have chosen anger. He sees every time you stayed when walking away would have been easier. He sees every night you prayed for a breakthrough instead of giving up. And right now, I want to keep this discussion open. Tell your story. Your experience matters. Someone else needs to hear it so they know they're not alone. Comment what this season has been like for you, the distance, the confusion, the emotional silence. Let's build a place where men and women can finally talk about what they've been too afraid to say. There is a unique kind of pain that comes from a touchless marriage, a loneliness that exists even when two people share the same bed. It's the silent ache of lying next to someone who used to desire you, someone who once reached for you without hesitation, someone who made you feel chosen. Now the distance is so thick, you can feel it in the dark. The absence of touch becomes louder than words, louder than arguments, louder than anything you could try to explain to another person. It's a wound that lives inside the soul. Genesis 2:18 says, "It is not good for the man to be alone." But what happens when you're married and still alone? What happens when the person God joined you to no longer meets you with closeness, warmth, or desire? Some men break in this silence. Some shut down emotionally. Some bury it so deep they almost forget what it feels like to be wanted. And some of you are at the edge of that, trying to hold on to God while your heart feels like it's falling apart. Song of Solomon 7:10 declares, "I belong to my beloved, and his desire is for me." That is how marital intimacy is supposed to feel: mutual desire. Not rejection, not avoidance, not months of coldness that make you question your worth. But when that desire vanishes, a man begins to wonder whether something inside him died with it. Your spirit gets heavy. Your confidence drains. Your prayers become desperate whispers, and even the strongest men can feel undone by the absence of touch. Proverbs 18:14 says, "A man's spirit sustains him in sickness, but a crushed spirit who can bear?" Some of you have carried a crushed spirit for years, and you've told no one. You go to work. You smile around friends. You shake hands at church. But inside, you are emotionally starving. There are nights where you turn your back to the wall so the tears fall quietly. Nights where you reach out gently, hoping maybe this time she won't pull away. Nights where you pray, "Lord, please soften her heart. Please restore whatever broke in us." And when nothing changes, that is where the enemy whispers lies. You're not wanted. You're not enough. You're not a man. That marriage is over. But listen to what God says instead. "My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever." Psalm 73:26. You are not defined by rejection. You are not abandoned by God. You are not walking through this valley unseen. Some of you fear that intimacy will never come back. Some fear you'll never feel desired again. Some fear that this cold season is permanent, that the marriage bed has died forever. But Romans 8:26 gives you hope. The Spirit helps us in our weakness, with groanings too deep for words. Even when you can't describe the pain, God understands it. Even when you don't have the strength to fight for closeness, He carries what you cannot. This is why we need this conversation openly, honestly, without shame. Too many men are dying silently inside marriages that look fine from the outside. Too many women are hurting in ways they can't explain. Too many couples are living in emotional famine while pretending nothing is wrong. So let's break the silence. What part of this resonates with you? What have you carried alone that needs to be spoken? Your story might be the answer to someone else's prayer for clarity. Share whatever you feel led to share your loneliness, your confusion, your heartbreak, your prayers that went unanswered. No judgment here, just truth, just healing, just people walking through the same valley, finally meeting each other in the light. There comes a moment in every cold marriage where the weight becomes too heavy to ignore. When you look at your spouse and realize you're the only one still reaching. You're the only one still trying to talk. You're the only one initiating affection, conversation, forgiveness, connection. And when that effort goes unnoticed or unreturned, it starts to change something inside you. The heart becomes tired. The soul becomes weary. Love feels one-sided, and that one-sidedness creates a slow-burning resentment you didn't ask for but can't escape. Ephesians 4:31-32 says, "Get rid of all bitterness, rage and anger. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you." But how do you show compassion to someone who won't even meet you halfway? How do you fight bitterness when every day reminds you of what you no longer have? How do you forgive the distance when the distance continues? You don't hate your spouse. You hate the feeling of being unwanted. You hate the silence. You hate the emotional shutdown. You hate that the home you're fighting for doesn't feel like home anymore. James 1:19-20 teaches, "Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. But when the one you love barely speaks, when communication feels one-sided, when the transparency you long for is replaced by avoidance or cold civility, your patience begins to crack. And beneath that crack lives a fear you rarely admit. A fear that this is the new normal. A fear that this distance is permanent. A fear that you will spend the rest of your life with someone who stopped trying long ago. Matthew 5:8 says, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." Purity of heart doesn't mean pretending you aren't hurt. It means letting God examine the hurt before it becomes poison. Psalm 139:23-24, is the prayer every wounded spouse eventually needs. Search me, O God, test me, see if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Not because you are the reason for the distance, but because carrying resentment will destroy you faster than the coldness ever will. Here's the truth nobody talks about. Loneliness inside marriage hits harder than loneliness outside of it. It feels like betrayal without the dramatic moment. It feels like abandonment without the goodbye. It feels like watching the person you love slowly drift away while you stand still, waiting for them to turn around. And maybe you've asked yourself, why am I the only one holding this together? Galatians 6-9 says, "Let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." But sometimes the good you're doing hurts. Sometimes the fight feels unfair. Sometimes you want someone to notice how heavy this is for you. Resentment doesn't start as anger, it starts as sadness. A sadness that keeps repeating. A sadness that never finds closure. A sadness that grows each time you try and nothing changes. But here is where hope begins. You don't have to carry this in silence. You don't have to hide the tiredness in your heart. You don't have to pretend the distance doesn't affect you. This is why these conversations matter, to bring light to what people bury, to let men and women tell the truth without fear of judgment, to help each other understand the wounds that lead to emotional shutdown, to figure out how to heal without hardening your own heart. I want you to share something if you feel led. Not because I need engagement, but because somebody out there is living your exact pain and needs to know they're not losing their mind. What part of this segment hit you the hardest? What do you relate to the most in this season of emotional distance? Your words could be the comfort someone else has been begging God for. There is a moment in every wounded marriage when you look around and realize something died here long before anyone admitted it. The intimacy, the warmth, the pursuit, the laughter, all of it slowly faded until only routine remained. And yet, even when the closeness has withered, something inside you still whispers, "Lord, can this be restored?" Joel 2:25 gives one of the most powerful promises God ever spoke. "I will restore to you the years the locusts have eaten, years of coldness, years of emotional distance, years of sleeping beside someone who feels unreachable." God does not only restore what was lost, He restores what was devoured. But restoration doesn't start with your spouse. It starts with your heart. It starts with God doing surgery on the places where disappointment has taken root. It starts with Him breathing life into the parts of you that gave up hope. Ezekiel 36-26 says, "I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh." Maybe your spouse hardened. Maybe you did too. Distance can turn anyone's heart into stone if pain stays unspoken long enough. But God is still the one who turns stone back into flesh. Some marriages don't break because of hate, they break because of neglect. Tiny wounds, small moments of unkindness, silent disappointments, unresolved conflicts that stacked up like bricks. Before long, affection became awkward, conversation became shallow, touch became rare, and passion felt like a memory trapped in a life you barely recognize. But hear this, intimacy is not dead just because it is buried. Isaiah 43-19 declares, "See, I am doing a new thing. I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland." Some of you have been living in a relational wilderness for so long that you forgot what connection even feels like. But God has a way of resurrecting what people consider impossible. 1 Peter 4-8 says, "Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers a multitude of sins." This doesn't mean ignoring reality, pretending nothing is wrong, or carrying the entire marriage alone. It means choosing to fight for a connection that grief, trauma, distance, or life may have buried. Love is not a feeling, it is a pursuit, and healing is possible when two hearts surrender their wounds to God. But here's the hard truth. Restoration requires honesty. Restoration requires humility. Restoration requires courage. You cannot heal what you keep silent. You cannot fix what you pretend is functional. You cannot rebuild a marriage with tools you never pick up. Some of you are longing for physical intimacy, but emotional intimacy died years ago. Some of you desire closeness in the bedroom, but there is a quiet war happening in the living room. Some of you crave touch, but neither of you knows how to bridge the emotional gap that fear and pain have created. Philippians 4:6-7 offers the starting point. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and His peace will guard your hearts. Before healing begins between you and your spouse, it begins between you and God. Let Him steady your heart before you try to heal theirs. Let Him pour strength into you before you pour into a marriage running on empty. Let Him teach you how to speak, when to speak, and how to soften where bitterness tried to harden you. And as we walk deeper into this, I want you to share your story again if you feel led. Share what you are praying God will restore. Share the parts of your marriage that feel beyond saving. Share the areas where you're asking God to breathe life back into what feels dead. Someone needs to hear that hope is still alive, even in the coldest marriages. And if this is the place where your heart broke open, if this spoke into a wound you've hidden for too long, comment, "I still believe God can restore me," and then write whatever God puts on your heart. Your testimony might become someone else's rescue. There is a question many people in cold marriages never say out loud, but it haunts them every night. What if I'm the only one fighting? What if I'm the only one who still cares about fixing this? What if my spouse has quietly checked out, emotionally and spiritually, and I'm here trying to carry a covenant on my back? That fear is real, and God does not ignore it. 1 Corinthians 7:10-11 says, "A wife must not separate from her husband, and a husband must not divorce his wife." These words were written for times exactly like this, moments when love feels drained, when the emotions fade, when the marriage becomes a battlefield of unmet needs and silent disappointment. God's command is simple. Stay faithful, even when emotions are shaken. Stay committed, even when affection disappears. Stay grounded, even when intimacy feels lifeless. But staying faithful does not mean staying silent. It does not mean ignoring your pain. It does not mean living invisible inside your own home. It means staying anchored in God while you seek wisdom, healing, and truth. Psalm 55:22 tells you exactly where to put the weight of your heart. Cast your burden on the Lord, and He will sustain you. Not might, not maybe. He will sustain you even when the marriage is barely standing. Some of you feel like you're holding hands with someone who stopped holding back. Some of you feel like your spouse is drifting further every year. Some of you feel like every prayer hits a ceiling. And some of you feel foolish for caring so deeply about a marriage that feels one-sided. But understand this: God sees the spouse who is still fighting. God honors the spouse who still prays. God remembers the spouse who still believes love can be resurrected even when it looks hopeless. Romans 5:3-5 says, "We glory in our sufferings because suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope, and hope does not put us to shame." Hope is not weakness. Hope is not naive. Hope is not denial. Hope is spiritual strength, the ability to believe God can revive what feels dead. But let's be honest, perseverance is exhausting. You wake up tired. You go to bed tired. You carry emotional weight you never signed up for. You fight alone because someone has to. And carrying both sides of the relationship wears down even the strongest heart. Isaiah 40:31 offers the strength you think you've lost. Those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. You are not meant to carry this forever in your own strength. God renews the spouse who refuses to give up. God restores the heart that keeps breaking but keeps returning to Him anyway. Sometimes the hardest part of a loveless marriage is the loneliness of leadership, leading spiritually, emotionally, and relationally. When your spouse is absent, numb, or unwilling. But 2 Corinthians 4:16 reminds you, though outwardly we are wasting away, inwardly we are being renewed day by day. God is rebuilding you, even when your marriage feels like it's falling apart. He is strengthening you in the silence. He is shaping you in the sorrow. He is sustaining you while you carry what your spouse won't pick up. But hear this clearly. You are not meant to drown in this alone. You are not meant to suffocate in silent suffering. You are not meant to pretend your heart isn't hurting. This community exists because so many people are living through this exact pain. Marriages without intimacy, without affection, without emotional connection. And when we share our stories, the enemy loses his power. Shame loses its grip. Isolation loses its voice. So let me ask you gently, honestly, what are you still fighting for? What is the part of your marriage you're still praying God will restore? What weight have you carried alone for far too long? This is your space, a safe place, a place for truth without judgment, a place to breathe again. If you feel led, share what burden you're casting onto God today. Someone needs your honesty more than you realize.